I definitely spend more time on lyrics than anything else. Like always, like I'm always, no matter what song it is,
Mm.
I'm always struggling with the lyrics at the end. Like a lot of times, like with the other instruments, I kind of just do it, and it's kind of just there, and I don't have to think about it too much. But lyrics is always like pulling teeth for me, and I'm like never. I'm always going back and rewriting shit, and never fully satisfied.
Greetings, friends! Welcome to episode 188 of Into the Necrosphere. This week I am talking to Jon Krieger of Blackbraid about Blackbraid II. We addressed some of the rumors and some of the crazy nonsense that has been floating around the man ever since his profile was raised. We also spoke about why he has turned down every record label that has thrown an offer his way, and much, much more. This, in my opinion, is one of the definitive conversations that you are going to hear with this man, and it's going to be coming your way very shortly. But first, Drugoth is a one-man black metal battalion out of Australia. I have been a fan of this band for a while now, but I did not expect a record as absolutely brutal and utterly crushing as their forthcoming record, Battles May Cease But War Is Forever. It is going to be released on August the 25th, and a couple of weeks ago, Drugoth himself sent it to me for review. I gave it a listen, absolutely loved it, told him that we have to premiere a song on the show, and that is what we are going to be doing right now, because for the first time ever, you are about to hear Drugoth's Primordial Savagery. You just heard Primordial Savagery by Drugoth off the forthcoming album Battles May Cease, But War Is Forever. It is due out for release on August the 25th. It'll drop on Bandcamp in the first instance. I don't think that Drugoth has made details available yet about a physical release, but either way, if you follow him on the socials, I am sure that you will be privy to whatever announcements there are to be made. But this is a phenomenal album, easily, in my opinion, a contender for one of the very best of the year so far, so do not sleep on it. My friends, if you are new to the podcast, make sure that you elbow drop the subscribe button on your platform of choice, follow me on social media, and if you truly want to show your love and support for the show, then head over to the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store, where the finest in necro merchandise awaits. T-shirts, hoodies, tank tops, and all sorts of other fashion-forward items that will not only make you look tough, but also appeal to members of the opposite sex. At least that's what I've heard. Also, very importantly, you will be aware that I'm a member of the podcasting Illuminati, the horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. Every Monday, listen to Brandon Legion bring you interviews with writers, directors, producers, and other luminaries working in the horror industry on his bi-weekly podcast, Horror Wolf 666. Every Tuesday, yours truly casts hexes and slays poses on Into the Necrosphere. Next week, the first in my series of face-to-face interviews, starting with my friend Ralph Schmidt of Ultha, recorded at this weekend's Reaperfest. And if you stick around to the very end of the podcast and you listen to the news rant, you'll hear me talk a little more about my experience of Reaperfest, some of the folks that I met, some of the interviews that I've recorded. Lots of exciting stuff coming your way from that. But yeah, next week, my conversation with Ralph, make sure that you don't miss that one. And then every Wednesday, make sure that you check out my friend Sensei Mike Hill, whose long-running podcast, Everything Went Black, brings you a sinister smorgasbord of guests ranging from musicians to artists to writers to MMA fighters. He also returns on a Thursday with my favorite podcast of the week, Necromaniacs, alongside Sheriff Mike Scondado and Professor Jeff Kashid. They review classic and new horror movies, and that is then followed up on a Sunday with my good friend, the Reverend Carl Haikara, bringing you a journey into the dark, the weird, the arcane, and the esoteric with his weekly podcast, Soul Knocks, that is going from strength to strength. So join us in the war against shit content. Join me for the news rant straight after my conversation with Jon of Blackbraid. And right now, sit back and enjoy as we go through a journey of discovery through Blackbraid's latest record and much, much more. So welcome to Into the Necrosphere. First and foremost, I think I'm gonna open the conversation with a hard one. Who do you work for, and how did an industry plant manage to come onto my podcast? Did you see the stories about Blackbraid being an industry plant?
I have, yeah. It's I don't really know what to say. It's almost like flattering in a way, but
dude, it's insane.
It's equally ridiculous. Like,
well, what I thought when I saw it was, what is this industry? First and foremost,
yeah.
Like, where is the black metal industry? Who runs it? Why, where's some of that black metal money that I'm surely I should get a piece of? But then secondly, a band that's been like completely and utterly independent is now somehow an industry plant. To what end? I mean, like, has Sony installed you in black metal so that you can start getting people to do their corpse paint with L'Oreal? Or
what's the end game? Like, inspire more people to be independent? I don't really see how that's industry forward, but
So, I mean, how does it, or how has the last couple of months been for you? Because you've kind of, there's been a very, very steady climb for you in terms of like your profile. I noticed today on Spotify, I mean, 70,000 monthly listens to Blackbraid is, for black metal band it's no, that's no small number. And obviously, you've been spoken of all over the place. I saw another article saying, is Blackbraid going to take black metal mainstream? I was like, this isn't a mainstream album. Where the fuck do you even come on that? But how is like how have you experienced that as kind of the man in the center of all of it?
Yeah, it's definitely been a crazy fucking time.
Yeah,
I kind of just try to ignore it, honestly. Like, it gets so, I don't know, people get so riled up and invested in Blackbraid on both ends, like people hate it and people love it, and they just fight on the internet all the time about anything they can think of, and like it's kind of crazy to me. Like it's like I mean, I don't mind it. I kind of just try to ignore it and like stay in my lane. Like I feel like as like business wise and like accomplishing things and being productive as Blackbraid, I think I'm so much better when I just ignore all that stuff. So I do try to ignore like most of the banter, no matter what it is. But I do dip my toes into it sometimes. It can be very entertaining.
Yeah. I mean, the
But
internet definitely has it has, and it does kind of take on a life of its own at a like shockingly quick pace as well. Something nuts will be put out, no matter how insane or fringe the opinion, and the next thing you know, it's making headlines on websites, it's in magazines, newspapers, crazy shit like that. But I will definitely say it's been a while since I've seen that happen to a band quite the way I've seen it happen to Blackbraid. And I mean, what I put it down to when I spoke about it on the podcast was just you guys have a very capable publicist. I mean, there's no other I mean, you've got a capable publicist. You've put out a great record. That's the reason why people are paying attention.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, Katie, Katie, she's awesome.
Yeah.
We've been with her almost like even before that though. Like it was insane. Like I actually remember the first time I talked to Katie was maybe like 10 months ago or whatever. Like one of our first conversations, she like didn't do my PR at first. I've never had anyone other than her either. Like she was my first PR person. It was all me doing it alone before that. But like I remember when she first came to me, she was pretty much at one point she was like, "There's not really anything I can do for you right now that you're not already doing for yourself. So I don't think it would be wise to like hire me." And then but then it just kept snowballing, and by like the end of last year, I think we had started working together because I just like couldn't it's too much. I couldn't manage the interview requests and all the other crap on top of the album and everything else. So since then Katie's been doing everything for me, and she's a godsend. She's amazing. So
Is Blackbraid the first musical project that you've kind of embarked on, or were you involved in bands previously?
Blackbraid's pretty much it. I played in like small local bands with friends and stuff when I was younger, but I was always kind of just like playing guitar to help them out and stuff back then. Like I'm a guitarist at heart, and I love playing guitar, and but I was more messing around when I was young, and wasn't really fully invested in anything. We never really went anywhere with any of those bands, and I never wrote for any of those bands either. It was kind of just like, oh, I'll play a guitar for you, and like they'd teach me their songs, and I'd come play a show. But Blackbraid was definitely like my first kind of dive into writing solo stuff.
Yeah. So where did it all start for you? I mean, you it sounds like the first thing you did was pick up a guitar. And how old were you when you started playing guitar?
Man, I hate that question because
I'm
30,
33 now, 32 and a half.
No, it's like the opposite. I like started playing guitar probably when I was like 8 or 9, honestly. And it's just like every time someone asks me that, I think about it. I'm like, damn, it's been that long. Like I should probably be like way better. I should be writing like Eddie Van Halen solos or something but here I am, like it's just crazy to think I've been playing for 30 years and I'm like only at the level I'm at. But that's kind of how guitar works, like a lot of it's not really the technical prowess, it's more just writing what you want, I guess. But yeah, I started playing guitar, man. My dad played like a little bit of folk guitar, and he had a nice acoustic or two when I was young, so I started on his stuff. But it was probably 9 or so when I really first started picking up his guitar. And then he was playing folk stuff like the Beatles and Bob Dylan and shit. So probably at that age, like within 6 months of playing guitar, I had surpassed him because he was never like huge into guitar either. And then maybe a year or two after that was at the point where I was good enough to like start diving into metal. And my parents were always super supportive. Like, I think after I had been playing for like 6 or 8 months and hadn't given it up and was like constantly getting better, at that point they were like, okay, we'll buy him. Like, I got a shitty little electric guitar back then, and that's kind of when I started going into metal. But I was pretty young for most of
And
it. Yeah.
what in particular was it about the guitar that attracted you?
Um, I don't know really. I don't really know. You know, you don't really know how your brain. Like, I'm in my 30s. I can't really remember what was going through my head when I was like 8 or 9. But I mean, I grew up in the country. You know, pre-internet back then. There really was nothing to do. Like, in the summer, I would probably play outside 14 hours a day by myself because I didn't have siblings either, and there was no houses within walking distance of me. You know, like, we were out in the middle of nowhere. So,
Whereabouts was that?
I live in the Adirondacks right now, which is like huge, national park, mountain range, pretty remote everywhere. And I grew up just outside of the Adirondacks, so like my parents only live um maybe an hour and a half from me right now. So
So
pretty much.
you've always lived very remote, kind of away from cities and things like that.
Yeah, I lived in some cities. Like, I went to college and shit when I turned 18. I left, and I lived in cities for a bit for like some of my 20s. But yeah, I grew up in the country, and then by my late 20s, I was like so sick of the city. I was ready to move back to the country.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I've spoken about this many times on the show, so everyone knows who's listening. But just to mention it to you, so we lived in myself and my fiance lived in London until about probably a year into the pandemic, and I said to her, "I fucking had it. I can't stand this bullshit anymore." So her parents have a house out in the countryside as well, which she kind of part owns. So it's like a third ownership. So her dad, her mom, her, and they've got 5 horses here. They've got loads of cats, dogs, and stuff like that. But the great thing about this is, when we moved here, no more having to deal with the lockdowns and stuff like that, unless you went out to Costco or something to go and buy food. The other thing is, I can walk outside my house, look out, and all I see is just rolling fields, and the level of just peace that brings versus the fucking hoi polloi that you have to deal with in the cities. I was in London yesterday again for work, and it's there's a junkie lying asleep in a fucking train carriage. Woman comes up to check on him, and he just shouts at her and carries on. I don't want to be surrounded by any of that dog shit. So for me, I'm very much I've said this many times. I think anyone who can do it, if it's feasible for somebody, get out of cities as quickly as you fucking possibly can. Especially if you're of a certain mindset. Like if you're of the mindset that attracts you to this style of music and this lifestyle, then the city is not for you.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I was kind of, was a little bit the opposite because I grew up my whole life out in the country, And then when I was like 17 and I finished high school, like all I wanted to do was get out. So, and like I lived in a few big cities. Like, I lived in Philly, and I lived in Honolulu for like half a year, and I was in Albany for a
That
while.
couldn't have
So
been bad though. Honolulu must have been fucking awesome.
Honolulu was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also like an extremely high poverty city. One of the worst in the U.S.
Oh,
Like,
really? I
it's
didn't
like,
realize that. I mean,
yeah.
I know Philly is bad, but I didn't realize Honolulu is like has got serious poverty issues.
Oh, it's like way up there. There's this huge black and white line, pretty much, like between the tourist areas and the non-tourist areas, and
Yeah.
you can tell like it gets bad immediately. But
Oh, dude,
it's a
I grew up in South Africa, so I know all about the dividing lines. If you're in a place like Cape Town now, there's these beautiful opulent homes and stuff, and then you can see as soon as you hit the part of town they would rather you avoid. It's glaringly obvious.
Yeah, that's how it was. Like, when I lived in Honolulu, I lived in, I was in like student housing, pretty much in the ghetto. I was pretty poor.
Mm.
Um, you know, we had like a shitty little apartment, and like I worked at this mall that had all these designer stores and shit in Waikiki, and I'd have to like ride my bike down there. I didn't have a car or anything there, so yeah, I was riding my bike everywhere. But it was probably like a 15-minute bike ride from my apartment, and like there was this one spot in the middle this big fucking, you know, like 4-lane road, and like you would cross it and then everything would just immediately be nice on the other side. And then I'd go home and it would be like a shithole again as soon as I crossed the road, you know?
Yeah.
But
so what was the catalyst that made you decide it was time to get back out of the city, and, you know, that the city experiment had come to an end?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I moved out when I was like 17 or 18, right after high school. And I was, you know, I wanted to like party and see the world and be young and crazy and shit. And I probably did that for like 5 or 6 years. And by the time I was like 24 or 25, I'd say I was just kind of sick of it. And, um, you know, I like was less inclined to like party my ass off and like go to the bars every night and socialize and shit like that. And that was like most of the only appeal that the city held for me. So like when I like started calming down and getting a little less crazy, like I started realizing like, oh, there's like really nothing here for me except for like booze to like keep me entertained, you know? And like once I stopped like partying and shit, I'm like, yeah, this place is pretty depressing. um and I started you know, I grew up hiking and camping and all that crap. So like by my mid 20s I was like pretty much going back to the forest, and I was doing backpacking trips and stuff like every weekend, or you know, whenever I had days off and shit. And I met my wife around then, and she had pretty much the same mindset. So by the time we were, you know, together for a year or two, we were already like looking both to move back to the country. And the Adirondacks is always like I said, I grew up not far from here, and I spent a ton of time here as a child, and it's super remote and beautiful here. So it's always been a really special place to me. So like when me and her started looking for houses, I was like, there's definitely no way I'm like looking outside of the country. Like we didn't even look anywhere near any of the towns or cities or whatever else. Like I kind of got to get, I kind of need to live away for everyone, I think.
It's very like where you are. It's like it's very Appalachian, lots of mountains, lots of woods and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
I tell people like it looks a lot like Alaska or Norway or something here. You know, every time we go to Norway, we've been a few times, and I'm just like so blown away at how much exactly it looks like our home. Like it's a pretty good description of it.
So getting back to kind of that musical journey, how does somebody out in the countryside, how do you discover, you know, heavy music? And you know, you almost certainly would have had similar experiences to me growing up around a bunch of religious nutcases, you know, who as soon as I had AC/DC, you know, written on my suitcase, you're marked, you know, you're a devil worshipper straight away. But how did you discover the music?
Yeah, you know, back then, like I guess it was mostly like through friends and at school and shit, like in the radio, you know, because again, like when I started listening to metal, the internet like barely existed, you know, like we were on like Windows 3.1, and people were like downloading shit on LimeWire or whatever.
I'd say
you know?
wonderful times, Windows 3.1.
Yeah, it was a much simpler time. I wish we could go back.
Oh, dude, I remember installing Windows 3.1 on my PC when I was a kid, and it was like I was so excited, like, oh wow, look at this! I can drag with my mouse to move stuff. I don't have to type shit in on a DOS menu. It was
I remember when my dad like showed it to me for the first time, and he was like, "Look, there's color and like, there's like 32 color palette or whatever." It was like a huge deal back then.
Well, you could get like there was CGA, which was 4 color, and then the EGA was 16, and then VGA was 32. And I remember seeing like some video games on the VGA for the first time, like Crime Wave, and I can't remember F117 Stealth Fighter. I remember seeing that and just being like, jaws just hanging open. And you look at it now and it's like it's absolutely atrocious. And then I look at the stuff my daughter sees, like she's seen me playing Elden Ring and stuff like that, and it's like this is like, you know, this is like your introduction to video games in the way that, you know, fucking Sopwith and Striker were my introduction to video games. It's so far apart. It's unreal.
Yeah, same for me, man. Like I think about that shit, like, you know, like Elden Ring or something, or like any of the new shit. I'm like, man, if if this shit came out when I was 7, like I would
Yeah,
have been on the computer for 3 months straight. Like my parents
yeah,
would have
yeah,
murdered me. Like
yeah.
I don't know how parents do it these days with all that, but yeah, like back then it was like 3 dots on the screen and you'd be like, "Oh, that's a tree," you know? Like
Yeah, yeah. Well, you had to you had to use your imagination in those times, and I don't think that that's a bad thing, because I one thing I notice in my daughter, and I'm trying my best to make sure I limit her screen time and I keep her away from doing too much stuff that I fear is going to stunt her imagination. Because what you were talking about earlier about the being outside and kind of being by yourself, I think I think it forces you to kind of live in your own imagination, and it stimulates the development of your imagination as a child. And I look at a lot of the youngsters now, and aside from lack of responsibility, lack of accountability, not knowing anything about how the world works, what they also lack a lot of is imagination. And equally, it's not just a lack of imagination, but it's kind of a lack of, don't know if the word is fortitude or independence to actually act on their imagination, right?
mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of that comes from being stuck indoors in smaller homes, because homes are all getting smaller, and being on screens all the time. I mean, you look at the mindless garbage that they're trying to pump into kids' minds on YouTube, and YouTube Kids and all that sort of shit. I've just straight up forbidden my daughter from watching that. I'm like, you're not going to watch this crap. This rots your brain. You can watch, if you want to watch something, you can watch the shit that I grew up watching, but you're not going to watch this garbage.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I don't even have children, but I'm in my 30s, a lot of my friends do, and it's like the media that they put out for children these days is just like so mind numbing. I'm like,
2 hours worth of someone
yeah.
unwrapping sweets. so, but so you discover you discover music, heavy music. Where was the kind of turn towards black metal? Because that's always, like, for me in my journey, that was a very pivotal step, but it was a very, like, I remember the things that happened that led up to it, and it was, when you first listen to Metallica, or you're listening to Pantera or something, then a lot of black metal that you hear, you just think is a bunch of racket, and then it's almost like one
Mhm.
day it's like something just trips, and all of a sudden it makes sense. Um, yeah, when did that happen for you?
Yeah, I was still pretty young. When I was probably like 14 or something, it was like the first 14 or 15, I'd say, it was like when I started going to shows. Um, and like you said, like back then, especially where I was, it was all like all the metal I knew was like US metal, like Metallica and Pantera and Lamb of God, stuff like that, you
Mm.
know. Um, and that year that I was 14, I went to see Opeth. Um, and that would probably be like the door opening thing for me. Like obviously Opeth is like, I wouldn't really call them black metal,
No.
but they border on it sometimes, especially back then it was a lot closer. And like I went to that show, yeah, I must have been 14, and that was like really like a game changer to me. Like even with them not being black metal, like Opeth is so European
Mm.
and like so different than anyone um in that regard. Like anyone in the US, like, there's like you can't really draw any parallels between a band like that and like Lamb of God or something, for instance.
No, no, no.
So like we went, and it was actually like that tour package was Moonspell and uh Devil Driver opened. Um
That's a
and I
that's a
knew,
I kind of remember that lineup, because I remember thinking how weird it was to have Devil Driver opening
yeah.
up for those two bands. I don't actually mind Devil Driver. I thought their first record was pretty cool. I've seen them live a few times. They're actually genuinely a good live band, but I always thought it was a weird combination having Moonspell there, who are, they have a very distinct live show, with Fernando slamming the fucking Mephisto staff around and all that shit. And then, Opeth does their own thing as well. They're exactly what you just said now. They're very far from, or like, Des Fafara style show.
Yeah, yeah.
Michael is a softly spoken guy on stage, and it's a very different vibe to Devil Driver.
Yeah. Well, that's like I actually knew Devil Driver, like Opeth headlined that tour, but I went to that show when I was like 14 or whatever because of Devil Driver, because they were all over like Headbangers Ball and shit back then, and doing stuff with a bunch of the other bands that I was paying attention to, like Lamb of God and stuff. So I was like, oh, Devil Driver's coming, I'll go watch a show. And then like Opeth played after them, and like my child brain like exploded. I was like, holy shit, like I didn't know metal like this even existed. Like it was nothing like any of the metal I had listened to up until that point. So um I started like deep diving into Scandinavian, the whole European metal scene, which is very different than the US one. Probably right around then, and like even though Opeth isn't really like black metal, I would say they were definitely the ones who like opened the door for me. Because like shortly after that, I discovered like some of the first black metal bands I listened to. Like, well, I guess like at that point in my life, I was already listening to Cradle of Filth. But I wouldn't really consider them black metal either. I don't know.
No.
They're hard to pinpoint. But back then they probably would have called themselves black metal, but I don't know. I don't know.
They would
But
have. Many others
yeah.
would have chosen to disagree with that.
But yeah, I also around that time, like I remember getting a sampler that had a bunch of black metal on it. One of my friends gave it to me, and I remember the song. It had like Emperor and a bunch of other people on it, but I remember there was like a Gorgoroth song on there. It was like Pest era Gorgoroth, and I remember hearing Pest's vocals and being like, "Holy shit, this is insane!" Like that was probably the first like true black metal song I heard that was like, "Okay, I'm hooked on black metal now." It was probably Gorgoroth.
Yeah, I've got to admit, in my Gorgoroth tastes, Pest was never. I've never actually been a particularly big fan of Pest. Gall, on the other hand, I am. To me, that dude is like, you know, if you think of men that embody black metal spirit the way I love it, like that confrontational, like really independent, just badass black metal vibe, you know, I would say him, Attila, Mortus from Marduk. Those three to me are like that's the holy trinity for me of like black metal frontmen, black metal voices as well. I mean, they're just, I mean, like Gall is one of the few guys that can pull off writing an entire black metal record and never doing screams once, which he did with Galsbeard. I mean, it's as fucking grim as it gets, but he's singing through the whole record. And the other thing about him that's always blown me away, he mentioned this when he was on the podcast, and I don't know whether you know this, but he improvises all of his lyrics in the studio. He never writes lyrics for a song.
Oh, I did
he
not
kind
know
of has
that.
a feel for what the song is gonna be about. He has it in his mind, and he just goes in and he just vocals.
That's crazy.
That's fucking nuts. And so much of what he's done is like one take. So what you hear on that last Galsbeard record, the Ghost Invited, I think it's called. There's many of those songs are just one take, his vocals.
Yeah, it's badass.
Which to me is fucking nuts. I mean, that is genius level, or not even just genius. It's just like it's a real feel for music that creates that ability in you to do that.
It is. Yeah, that's amazing. I had no idea about that either.
So let's talk through Blackbraid II, because I saw an interview with you and you were talking about the fact that you'd written this record, you know, not at the same time as, but certainly very, very close to the first Blackbraid album. And my takeaway in listening to this record and comparing it with the first one, it sounded to me like a much more sure-footed album and a much, much more confident album. And I could understand why, you know, if not knowing you, not having spoken to you, where that might have come from, right? You put out the first album, it got a great response, and now you kind of feel like, okay, I've hit my straps here. This is the direction I'm going to take. So I was super surprised by how close some of these songs had been written to the first album. Is the take that I've just kind of outlined to you there about that confidence, is that it? Am I reading too much into it, or was there a bit of that at play with these songs?
It could have been that. Yeah, it's really hard to judge. Like, I'm sure releasing it and everyone loving the first one definitely helped, but they were kind of they've always kind of been like part one and part two in my mind to the same album, you know, like I've said before, like, I probably had like 2 or 3 of those songs started, um, at the point that the first album was like done. Like Moss was actually fully recorded, when we sent the first one to the press, and I was like, I could put this on here and make it a 7-track album. And that was like kind of when I buckled down, and I was like, no, this song is like, it kind of just like naturally happened. Like it just was like a little more polished and evolved than the rest of them. I felt like, and like I was already had the shells for like 2 or 3 other songs like that. And I was like, these feel different enough that I don't really want to cram them onto this record. I think I'll just like continue and do a second one in this vein where everything is more thought out and kind of like an extension of the stuff I was trying to do on the first album. Because like the first one was pretty like DIY, and I didn't think about it much. Even when I was doing it, like I was like, this doesn't really matter, like I didn't really expect it to gain any traction. I was kind of just like winging it, and by the time I was ready to release it and was ready to go, I'm like, there's like a lot of shit I had thought of in the meantime where it's like I could have done this differently, or like this would have been better like this. So I think the second album was kind of like my answer to that. Like, well, if I'm gonna like buckle down and like evolve this sound, I'd rather just go all the way and like do a huge second album. I'm already have like half the basis laid out for it. So yeah, it was kind of my I think it just came with the time, like the longer those songs were out, like the more I kind of developed that sound, I think.
Before we do the track by track breakdown, we were joking earlier about your you being an industry plant, but I mean, I cannot conceive of the idea that labels weren't interested in you after that first record, at least. Like I was blown away. Like when I first listened to this album, I'd kind of almost just ignored the fact, Katie had sent me the promo. I sort of just ignored the fact that you weren't signed, and I think it was when I was doing the review for the record on my podcast. I went on Metal Archives thinking, oh, who are they signed to? And I was like, Jesus Christ, it's still independent. Like, how's that possible? Had you been approached by anyone? Is it like is it by design that you're independent, or is it just a case of there's not no one has kind of reached out yet?
Yeah, I've honestly turned down every metal label that I could name off the top of my head at this point. Just in the last month or two, I probably turned down 20 labels. Most of them small, but I'm getting offers all the time. I guess I just like it was pretty surreal. Like the first like big metal label or two that I started talking to was in like last April, like when I only had 2 singles out. Was like when I started getting the offers, and at that point I was still pretty small, and like it was kind of nuts to me to be like, holy shit, these guys, like these labels that I've listened to my whole life, are like coming for me off of like 2 singles or whatever. It's fucking crazy. But back then, like I was very new and had no experience whatsoever, really. Just was riding off the 2 singles pretty much. So the offers weren't that good, and I was like, well, like if this is what like major labels are gonna offer me, like I'd rather just like buckle down and do it myself. Like I'd do better that way anyway. Like I don't want to like fucking give them everything that I just worked to make, so like it started out of me being stubborn, and I kind of like dug my heels in and was like, well, I'm gonna like learn how to, I'm gonna do a vinyl release myself and do my own merch and my own media and all that shit. And then I kept getting bigger, but once like all that shit was established, like me and my wife do pretty much everything ourselves still. She manages most of the business end of things for me. So
she did the album cover as well, right?
No, Adrian Baxter does the album cover.
Okay.
He's a guy from the UK. Yeah. But she does like my photos and my videos and stuff, and she's done like the animated videos and stuff we did. She's done a ton of shit for me. So
Yeah.
She runs the web store and the website, all the shipping crap. She does pretty much everything, honestly. But yeah, like once I like early on decided I was like I'm gonna like get set up to do this little small release myself and stuff, and it was fine. And we kind of just kept expanding. And now when I get offers, I'm like, I already have all the shit set up to just keep doing it myself, and like we're already successful, and it's like there's no reason to look at them at this point anymore. So
Mm.
it started with me being stubborn, and then at one point it was kind of just like, oh, like I'm actually set up to handle this now, and now we're just running with it, I guess.
Which is such an interesting case study, right? Because so many times you read about people saying, well, the metal scene is too crowded, no one can make it anymore, blah blah blah. But you've kind of proven that very wrong. And actually, the interesting thing is you've proven that theory wrong entirely on your own terms, which I think is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy, and it still seems kind of like that. Like I look at metal as a whole, and like the scene, the worldwide scene, and whatever, and it's like there's so many bands out there like struggling to make it that are great at the same time, and then there's me. It's like I don't really understand.
Well, in a
Kind of
way,
just
I'm kind of thinking about it as you're talking about it. You could almost imagine if they dedicated the time to actually getting the band out and doing the right things with social media, etc., rather than focus on trying to entice a label to get them signed, or focus on kind of going that traditional route of send your tapes out to send your music out to a label, try and get signed, blah blah. They might actually be much further ahead. They might even arguably be further ahead without the label, because the label is going to prioritize who they think they're going to back, who they think is a winner. And you're going to get, if they don't believe in you, you're going to get short shrift. I mean, there's tons of stories about labels that didn't put enough into a band, and then that band left, went somewhere else, or did something on their own, and they completely blew up.
yeah, exactly. Like that was kind of what deterred me too. Like a lot of these labels, like I won't say any names or anything, but
Yeah,
they'd have like these huge bands,
I won't
like
try and get you to run down anybody. So
yeah. Like I just like hypothetically, like we'll say Nuclear Blast, like they weren't actually one of them, but like Behemoth's their biggest band, obviously for black metal. So like people would come to me and they'd be like, like we'd love to sign you, and like here's what we'll offer to you. Like by the way, we're like really focused. Like Behemoth is our number one thing right now, and like you're tiny and Behemoth is huge, so like we're gonna focus on Behemoth, and like that's kind of like the mindset that most of those big metal labels have, and it's like, well, if you're gonna put minimum effort into me, like I could also do that myself,
yeah, yeah,
And the same is kind of like the same mindset. Like I stopped working. It's been over a year now since I quit my job to like focus on Blackbraid stuff and kind of like make Blackbraid my full time thing. So I think it was also like around then. Like I think I quit my job maybe last April or May. Um, and at that point when I quit my job, like I was doing really good even on back then on sales, for merch and shit. So that's kind of like what made it possible. I was like, it was getting to be too much because I work full time, like 40 hours a week or whatever.
yeah.
It was like I can't do both of these, and I got to make a decision. And obviously, I decided to do the art, but um, that was kind of a catalyst too, because like when I quit my job and did that, I was like, all right, I'm doing good now, but I need to I kind of force myself to like buckle down and get serious. And I'm like, I really got to like make sure I establish this as like something I can support myself off of
Mm.
if I'm gonna justify like leaving my job like I
I
just
was
did.
about to say, and that's been, I mean,
So,
without digging into your personal finances, that's been feasible so far for you?
oh yeah, I mean it's just getting easier. Honestly, it was kind of an uphill battle in the beginning, but it's kind of like when the first album came out in full back last August. It was kind of like a flip switched, and
Yeah.
it's just been up. It's just been great since then, and ton of work, but Yeah, I
Well,
don't really.
if you ever feel like the hype around the band is dying down and you want to really get on back on people's radar, you start selling some of those Blackbraid NFTs. Then they'll really think you're an industry plant. All right, so let's talk about the record. So, Autumnal Hearts Ablaze, the first of 3 instrumentals. These instrumentals are stunning, by the way, absolutely stunning. I think it's so many times an instrumental on a record is superfluous in my opinion. It's just kind of tacked on. But I feel like if you had not included those, the album would genuinely have been robbed of something very, very special. And the other thing that I love about them, there's two things. One, it reminds me of one of my other favorite US black metal bands, Cobalt. There's just something about it that reminds me of that, but in like a good way. The same feeling I get. But it's also, you were talking about guitar playing earlier, and I do think it's less about technical dexterity with any instrument and more about, are you able to or express yourself in a way that is sincere and authentic to you. I think with all 3 of those instrumentals, I think that really, really comes out. You're saying an awful lot with really not a huge amount of, you're not doing a fucking Ingwie Malmsteen's in instrumental. It's if you were to equate words with notes, you're saying a lot with very few words, and there's a real beauty in that, right? But yeah, talk to me a bit about them. We can actually wrap all 3 of those instrumentals up if you wish. But yeah, talk to me a bit about the thinking behind them. Where the inspiration came from. And recording them and putting them onto the album.
Yeah, I mean, I do love those instrumentals. It's kind of like on this album they kind of like almost are like an intro or something in my mind. Like the album is like loosely broken into like 3 parts, and like those 3 instrumentals will kind of like serve as like the introduction to each part, like the first part, the second, and the third. And you can kind of hear like the sound change a bit in between them too. But with Blackbraid, like I always kind of want the albums to it's like an endeavor in storytelling, I guess. Like I put a lot of weight on like the track order in the way I arrange the albums, and I kind of want it to feel like a fluid story that can be like retold when you replay the album and stuff. So those kind of, I guess the instrumentals are kind of there for that as well, to like set the mood, and kind of let you know, like almost like foreshadowing the next, the next bit of the album or something.
Yeah. It's just this beautiful segue into doing that. That style, that acoustic style. Would you ever consider doing a project that's just purely focused on that? Would you do something that's entirely acoustic?
Yeah, maybe. I've thought about, like, I would probably do an acoustic Blackbraid album one day, because I like a lot of, like, pretty much all the songs I have can be played acoustic, and I have like acoustic ways to play them. But I'd like to put more out before I do that too. Maybe once I have like another full length or two, I would do an acoustic album that's like a compilation of tracks, like unplugged across all of my albums, maybe.
Yeah. So then we kind of start off the first part 1 of the record with The Spirit Returns. Yeah, talk to me a bit about that. I think both of those 2 opening tracks, like the Spirit Returns, The Wolf That Guides the Hunter's Hand, it's a really great 1-2 punch, because I think it sets the album up perfectly, but it doesn't necessarily give away some of the dynamism that's going to come later. There's almost always, like, if you were to break it into 3 parts, it feels like there's always something new to discover on the record as you kind of progress through it. You haven't kind of shown all your tricks in, on song 3. You understand what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Spirit Returns was I think that's maybe my, I don't know, it's very hard to pick a favorite, but um for a long time that was like my favorite, I would say. And it's just a really powerful song, and it symbolizes a lot of things to me. And then on top of that, um it's about like redemption and power and stuff, but on like a grand scale, but at the same time that can kind of apply to Blackbraid. So I thought it would be perfect to have it as its first real track on there because like um, it wasn't what I was thinking about when I was writing it, but when it was done, it also seemed like this is like a very fitting metaphor for like Blackbraid returning as well for the second album. So I think like from the second I finished it, I knew I was like, I'm gonna make this the first song on the album.
Out of interest, on this run you've just done with Cattle Decapitation and Dark Funeral, what's been the song that's gone over best of the new material?
um, probably Moss. I don't know. People really love Moss's Covered Bones. That was the only song that was fully out when we started the tour too. Like Spirit, we released like maybe halfway through the tour, so like people knew Moss from the beginning because it was out like right before the tour, and Moss and Spirit were the only two new songs we played on that tour actually. So um Moss was, I mean, they were both received very well, but Moss is like a bit slower and doomier, and it's long, so I didn't really
Well,
know how that
it's
would go over.
interesting. Apologies for talking over you. But it's interesting what you said about Opeth, because as soon as you mention that fondness for Opeth, immediately Master Covered Bones on the Altar of the Moon makes more sense, because it's kind of like, it's obviously not, it's not an Opeth. I wouldn't even say tribute, but it's that sense of progression and almost of your music telling the story as much as the lyrics. That's absolutely present there on that song and on A Song of Death on Winds of Dawn, which comes straight after it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You can definitely hear that. And I love those long Opeth tracks too. Like Morning Rise is my favorite Opeth album, and I'm pretty sure like almost every song on that album's over 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Or at least like right there. So
Morning Rise was my first Opeth record, and then I got My Arms Your Hearse, and I would say my favorite Opeth song. It would be a very tough one to pick. I mean, I'm not a fan of the post Watershed Opeth era very much. Heritage I could still tolerate, but beyond that it starts getting tricky for me. But I think my favorite Opeth song is possibly Dirge for November of Black
oh
Metal Cloth,
yeah.
which
Yeah,
I
I
think
can
is
play that on
magnificent.
acoustic. That was like one of the first songs
Oh,
I
dude,
learned on
that
acoustic when I was
acoustic
young. Yeah.
that acoustic part at the end of that song, unreal, just absolutely unreal. So next we've got The Wolf That Guides the Hunter's Hand, which actually has some of my favorite lyrics on the whole record. That last part of the song, bathed in the light of a dukish dawn, the wolf nods his head towards the rising sun, his hot breath smoking like spirits in the wind, and I know in my heart that mine makes its home within his. That last line is just extraordinary.
Thank you. Thank you. That song has been received phenomenally since I released the record. It was it's become like a very obvious front runner. And yeah, I am extremely proud of that too. Like those are probably maybe my favorite lyrics on the whole album as well. Like so yeah, I have to agree with you there. Like I really
Even if I
love,
say so myself.
yeah. Those are like those are like some of the words. Like sometimes I worry about forgetting words, but it's like I'll definitely never forget that part, you know? Like I've some of the coolest shit I've wrote is in that song, I think so.
Where does your lyric writing kind of inspiration come from? Because you have a, I mean, obviously you're telling a story, right? But you've got quite an abstract way of writing lyrics, which I've always had a preference for. Like, I don't like lyrics that are particularly prescriptive. And actually, I as much as I dislike the man Randy Blythe, I do one thing I have to give him kudos for. He is a phenomenal lyricist. I actually think Phil Anselmo is an incredible lyricist as well, especially if you go into like some of the stuff that he wrote for Down and things like that. There's like a real poetry to how he writes. There's similar, obviously not similar music or even similar sentiments being expressed, but there's a similar like poetry to the way you write. You're not just going, in hell I burn for Satan, like Glenn Benton, which is, which has its place too. But what's more meaningful is something like this.
Yeah, I agree. It's probably just me being a perfectionist. Like I definitely spend more time on lyrics than anything else. Like always, like I'm always, no matter what song it is,
Mm.
I'm always struggling with the lyrics at the end. Like a lot of times, like with the other instruments, I kind of just do it, and it's kind of just there, and I don't have to think about it too much. But lyrics is always like pulling teeth for me, and I'm like never. I'm always going back and rewriting shit, and never fully satisfied. Well, I'm happy with it at the end, but it takes me a long time to get there usually. So
Yeah. Out of interest, well, what are some of your favorite lyrics of other, other albums, other bands?
yeah, man. It's hard to say. Like um, most of my life I went like not really listening to lyrics, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like in metal, like if I could hear them, they were there. But I like did not really go and look up people's lyrics much for most of my life, and like because I was always been a guitarist, like I'm always consumed by guitar when I'm listening to metal, and
Mm.
it wasn't until like I started doing vocals for Blackbraid that I started caring a bit more. But when it comes to like lyricists, like I think Opeth is great. Like everything he writes is super deep and poetic, and I'm not sure. Like I'm trying to think of things that like really kind of hit home for me, but nothing was like super. Like I listened to a lot of Dissection, and I love Dissection, but I think it's more about the way he like delivers almost in the lyrics. Like his lyrics are cool too, but um, like the sound of his voice is like a
That's always been
huge
a big thing.
inspiration on me.
Delivery can make such a big difference to lyrics. I was talking about in Hell I Burn a second ago. If you read the lyrics, they are ridiculous lyrics, but it sounds so cool when Glenn does it on Legion, because he's got like this pace and this rhythm in his voice. In Hell I Burn again. It's just genius. I mean, I fucking I can't get enough of it. But sometimes. Sometimes it's very, very much about delivery. Obviously, you can't say you like Dissection in 2023 because John is he's on the banned list. He's on the naughty list. So we then kind of we segue into part two of the record, which is, you've got your two longest songs. So Moss Covered Bones on the Altar of the Moon, A Song of Death on Winds of Dawn. Give me kind of just, you were talking about the story and the concept earlier. Can you kind of outline the spine of what you're talking about, and at this stage of the record, what is happening in the story?
Yeah, for Song of Death, you mean, or
Well, yeah. So really, kind of part two of the record. So both of these songs.
yeah, I would say that's kind of like the main, like the center of the record. Um, Moss is like big, elaborate story, I guess you would say. Um, about magic and nature and whatnot, and the night. And Song of Death is probably like one of the heavier songs um, on the album, like emotionally heavy, I guess. I mean, but Song of Death is like a little more of an abstract concept than a lot of them. It's kind of about like I guess you would say that song's about. It's a pretty sad song. It's about kind of love and sadness, and when I was it's about grieving and death, and learning to live with death or grief, or get over it, whatever you want to call it. But I think there's a line in that song that is also one of my favorite on the albums. It's like what is it? The greatest test of all, learning to let go of the love that
I was actually just about to bring that
lights
up,
the
actually, because
flame of
I love that line
sadness
too. Yeah.
within our hearts. It's pretty kind of a good summarization of that whole song. Like it's about love and loss and grieving, and that line, like the love that lights the flame of sadness within our hearts. That's kind of talking about just how I was thinking about death and grieving, and how awful it is when like someone super important to you dies, or you lose a
Yeah.
loved one or whatever. And the concept there was like the reason that things are so painful and evil and awful and shit is love. You know, like love is the extreme root of all of those awful feelings and depression and sadness and um you know, like if you didn't have love in your heart for this person or for this thing or this concept or whatever, you wouldn't have been sad when it died. Like so it's um kind of about like love being a double-edged sword. Like I guess, you know, like there's it brings kind of most all of our happiness and, you know, fun into our lives, but like it's also really the thing that brings like loss, depression, death, all of that shit is only really uh kind of like, you know, a side effect of love, I guess. Like it brings I guess like the worst and the best parts of our life. Like you can't have it one way. Like if you choose to love something and gain happiness from it, you're also going to like equally gain that amount of sadness when it leaves your life.
There's a cost. There's a cost to loving anything or loving anybody, you know, because there's the inevitability that at some point you're going, you know, you're going to lose that, you know, either to death or through other circumstances. But I think so. My experience of grief personally, and something I read once that really resonated with me. Somebody described death and the grief caused by death as standing in the ocean, and the waves are kind of lapping up against your legs, and you know, initially the water is cold, and then eventually you kind of just get used to the fact that the water is lapping up against your legs. It's still cold, it's still unpleasant, but you're used to it, and you can kind of, you can live with it rather than sort of wince whenever the wave hits you. And my own experience has been exactly that. I don't think that you ever really get over anything. If you truly loved somebody and that person dies, or you know, even an animal. I mean, I'm actually thinking specifically about you know, an animal you know, dying. In this instance, my own personal example, when they die, you never get over it. You just learn to live with it, and you shift your thinking from the tragedy of the loss or the events that led up to losing them to almost living in the happiness, or in the happy memories. Like they live on in your mind through the memories that you have of them. But as I said, the unpleasantry and the sadness of them, of losing them, that to me never ever goes away.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's pretty much spot on what that song is about, I would say. You know, like you never really you're never ready to let go of something you love, but you also like never have the choice when the time comes. It's kind of just like, now you have to deal with this. So I guess
So there's definitely something to how I have, from conversations I've had with people in bands and the conversation we're having right now, I do think there's something to be said for a lot of the folks that are into the kind of music that we're into, and at least experience music in the way that I think you experience it, and certainly the way I experience it. I think wallowing in music that is, you know, genuinely about negative things and death, in a weird way, has certainly made me be much more grateful for life. And I think what I, because I'm reminded of death as a concept on a regular basis, I think it's one, it's very humbling to me personally, but two, I think it's meant that I have really set out in my life to make sure that I truly appreciate every moment that I have with you know, anything that I love, whether it's my dog, whether it's my fiance, whether it's my parents. My parents are reasonably old now, so you know, I know that I probably have, if I'm lucky, 3-4 years more of my dad, maybe longer with my mom, because on my mom's side people live for fucking ever. So hopefully I've inherited with that. So but yeah, it's you genuinely do. There's a real, like, palpable sense of this is going to come to an end every time you spend time with them, and so because of that, you extract a lot more joy out of it, and you live far more in the moment than I think a lot of people typically tend to.
yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that too. And that's like, yeah, that goes right back to it. It's kind of like all kind of what that song is about. It's very hard to put it into words, but
Yeah, but I think anyone who's dealt with it knows exactly what we're talking about.
yeah.
Um, So then we move to the final part of the record. Twilight, Hymn of Ancient Blood is the first song that comes after Celestial Passage, and this is kind of, as I'm reading it, this sort of continues the concept of grief, but it's almost from a slightly different angle.
Yeah, it's also about death and like the rebirth cycle and whatever you want to call it. But I think up until that song, I was pretty much um talking about death from like a third person view, like, oh, like you um are losing this person, or this thing that is special to you, whatever. um in Twilight Hymn, it kind of shifts to like that song is more about death firsthand, um it's kind of like a vision I had, like where I was dying, and what it would be like uh to die personally. um yeah, it's hard to explain again, I guess, but it's more like written about death from like a firsthand perspective, like someone dying in real time.
And then Sadness and the Passage of Time and Memory is next.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a really beautiful way to end that song with the line, "The memory of her spirit grows softer with the coming dawn." It almost kind of ties back to that analogy that I mentioned before about the waves kind of keep lapping at your legs, but you just become more and more used to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's spot on again. I mean, that song is like very closely intertwined. That's like the other super emotionally heavy song on there. Very similar to Song of Death, kind of about the same thing, but like different like facets of it or whatever, because they're both like heavily about death. Sadness is like the Song of Death is more about like coping with grief and like learning to work through it or whatever, and um sadness is more just kind of about sadness, I guess, is like a fitting title for it. But sadness was kind of written like about like well, the full title, like Sadness and the Passage of Time and Memory, is kind of about like watching people fade, from old age or whatever, and as you get closer to death. And it's like kind of how it seems to me like the older you get, time becomes like less and less relevant. And at some point, it seems to me like everyone kind of reaches this point in their old age. We're talking pretty damn old, but uh, like, when people are getting ready to die and reaching the end of their life, like, and you're getting more delusional and stuff, is also kind of what it's about. And like the realities of the past and the present and the future are kind of blurring in your head. And it seems to me like when people are on their deathbed and they're old and like getting ready to leave this planet, a lot of stuff comes down to emotion, and they kind of start thinking in like emotions instead of time. Like um, maybe this this old lady or old guy, like maybe their fucking spouse died like 40 years ago. But when you're on your deathbed and you're 90, you don't like realize that they're dead. Like you knew that for 30 years of your life, but it's out the window now. And like you're remembering their you're thinking of their memories or the emotions that they brought you. And like the concept that they died years ago is just not there. Kind of something like that, I guess, is like uh what I was trying to convey with that song. Like the world slipping away from someone as they're getting ready to leave, and then at some point, it's just gone, and they're gone too. And it's very sad, and um kind of like a mix of sadness and I guess like I don't even know what the word for it would be, but yeah, it's a complicated song, I guess.
Being reflective. Well, I was just about to say we've taken this down a very dark path. So I'll wrap up with two questions. Question one: what's the what is the plan now? I mean, you kind of on a tidal wave of good things. Touring, like new music. What are you going to be doing next?
Yeah, we're gonna do another big tour. I think we're probably gonna announce that in the next day or so, actually. Another big US tour coming, and then next year I think we're probably gonna kind of lay off the US since we did so much stuff here this year.
Yeah.
Kind of focus on bringing Blackbraid to some other countries and maybe some other international festivals. But as far as the music, I don't really know. I don't plan to write another album for quite some time. Like, it was kind of always my idea to, like, these albums are kind of like interconnected in my mind, and I always knew I kind of wanted to put them out back to back. And now that they're done, I think I'm probably gonna Blackbraid will definitely keep touring and doing our thing, but it's probably gonna be a while before I write a third record, I would say.
Yeah. So when does your master plan to have fully infiltrated the black metal scene and sabotage it from within, turn it corporate? When does that kick into gear? No,
Right
the
now.
question I was going to ask is, on this cattle decapitation tour, just to finish it off on a lighter note, what is the craziest, most surprising thing that you saw while you were on tour?
Man, I don't know. Everything went so smoothly. Everyone on that tour package was great. Like, we loved all those bands. Um, they all helped us out, and it was it was an amazing tour. Obviously it's our first one, but I don't think all tours go that smoothly. Like, everyone loved each other and everyone had a blast. And I think probably like one of the more ridiculous moments on that tour was in one of our Texas states. I think it was Houston. Like, Matt broke a string. My guitarist, my rhythm guitarist broke a string, and it was just like this shit show compound of events. Like, he broke his string, and like, Travis from Cattle Decap was like side stage watching us that show. Thank God. So like he like ran off and changed a string super fast because we didn't like have our backup that day for whatever reason either. So like, I remember like looking side stage, and like him and Travis are like sitting there on the ground like changing the string while we're playing Moss. And then he gets that fixed, and like he's back up on stage, and then like as soon as he gets back on stage his strap breaks. So like then Travis like comes back out, and we're playing, and like Travis is like straddling him from behind, like trying to hold the guitar on his body. And like, and then like Travis was just standing there like minding his own business too. Like, Travis is an amazing dude, but like he was definitely like not show ready. Like, he's like sitting there in like his gym shorts and his flip flops, just like holding Matt on stage, like, while his guitar is like falling off of him.
What blows me away about him is how he manages to pull off his vocals as well as he does live. I saw them with Broken Hope a couple of years ago, and it was the one thing I was always going to look out for. Is like, one, is he able to do those goblin vocals on stage? Two, is David McGraw able to pull off the drums that band does on stage? And both of them were just nailed it down to a turn. I mean, and the thing is, you could hear there's no backing tracks or anything. That's just him doing his thing. But fuck me, it's nuts. It's absolutely incredible.
Oh yeah, he's insane, man. So much respect for those guys. Like, all of them, amazing musicians. But yeah, I was like definitely trying to like spy on him for a bit here and there and be like, how does he do this? Like, because like he comes out, he's like sounds phenomenal every night. So
yeah,
it's pretty awesome, I mean, especially with how long they're playing.
It's easy to know if you've studied, any devil worshipping documentary. All metal musicians drink cat's blood before they go on stage. That's where you get those vocals from. Listen, my man, thank you so much for your time. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, and I hope at some point we will. I mean, I know as long as you work with Katie, most likely we'll catch each other again down the road. So, yeah, dude, I'm delighted for your success, and especially happy now that I know you legitimately done it like completely and utterly on your own terms. I think that's awesome. So
Hell yeah. Yeah, it's been crazy, but I'm still independent somehow. So
awesome. I'll stay that way. All right. Talk to you soon, my man.
All right, thank you.
Take
See you
care,
soon.
brother. Bye-bye.
All right.
You just listened to Sadness and the Passage of Time and Memory of Blackbraid II. It's available right now on Bandcamp. Make sure that you check it out. If you buy yourself some music, let John know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere that sent you. Big thank you to him for coming on the show, and a big thank you to Katie at Suspiria PR for getting the interview set up. Hopefully not the last time that he is going to feature on the podcast. No new release roundup this week, my friends. I know I offered one, or promised one last week, but between everything that happened with Reaperfest and having my daughter over for a visit, etc., it was just too crazy busy. So that is deferred until next week. But right now, if you sit quivering with fear in your house at the sight of the summer sun, it's time for you to get to stepping, because this is my weekly news rant.
A roundabout for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
All right, my friends, we're going to get started on Metal Storm as always, but before we get going properly, I just wanted to say a couple of things about Reaperfest. I attended it, of course, this past weekend. It took place in the prestigious Hairy Dog Pub in Derbyshire. My first visit up to Derby, very, very enjoyable. First of all, a big thanks and a shout out to Gary and everybody at Reaper for organizing the event, for having both myself and Paige, for organizing a spot for me to do interviews in, and just really being accommodating and putting on a very, very well organized, very well run festival. It has been really cool to see Gary and Reaper grow as quickly as they've done. I mean, I remember I've been friends with him on Facebook now for quite some time, and I remember when he first started putting on shows, and it seems to have kind of snowballed in a relatively short space of time. And for those of you guys that are following what's going on in the UK scene, you'll probably have seen the announcement about next year's Fortress Festival. That is going to be a really, really big step up for him and for his business. But it's also going to be really great for fans of heavy music. He didn't want to reveal, even though I did try and press him on it, but he didn't want to reveal who he's been talking to about appearing at the show. Apparently, most of the lineup's already been booked, but I know and I trust him well enough to know that he has something pretty goddamn special up his sleeve, and I'm definitely going to try my best to get out to Fortress next year as well. So really fun weekend, really great to meet a bunch of people in person that I got to interview. So there will be, in the next couple of weeks, you'll see face-to-face interviews with Ralph, as I mentioned before. I also have a really good interview with AV of Abduction. I have one for the ages with my brother Cheyenne of Trivax, and you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see I'm representing. And I also have a really good one with Luke from Heathen Deity. I was going to interview Alex from Ruins of Beverast, but there was a bit of a scheduling mix-up, partly my fault. They also had an issue at their hotel, which meant that their scheduling around their dry rehearsal before they played that Sunday evening was messed up. But we did say that we'll do something on Zoom. So there will be another Ruins of Beverast interview. So if you enjoyed the first one, which 5,000 plus on YouTube alone did enjoy, brace yourselves because there's more coming. But anyway, back to the actual festival. Another big shout out to some of the Legion that came up and said hello. That was really cool as well. Paul, Scott, Lucia, Raz, Isabel. I met a bunch of you, and it was just so much fun hanging out with everybody. I felt slightly bashful, I think, is maybe the right way to describe it. It's crazy when you speak to people about the podcast and you realize how much they know, or they repeat back stuff to you that you've said or things that you've done. It's cool to know that there are people paying attention, and it's even better to know that the people that are paying attention are such fucking cool dudes as well, and cool girls. So, so that was great. What else is there to say? My verdict on the bands, I would say the two bands that completely stole the show, Heathen Deities on Sunday morning. First slot, never easy to do because, you've got people kind of dragging themselves in from the night before, probably still a little blary-eyed. But Luke and the gang literally treated that like it was they treated it like it was their headlining show, and I thought it was fantastic. We actually, on the interview that we did straight after, we spoke quite a lot about his approach to his approach to playing live, his philosophy towards performance, and very much aligned to things that I like as well. And you could see that in the performance. And then Ultha on the Saturday night. My God, what a show those guys put on. One of the most balls out, emotive black metal shows I've ever seen in my life. I am not ashamed to admit I had a little bit of a lump in my throat at the very end. They did, of course, the last Ultha record in its entirety. And the way that record is sequenced, it does end off on this really poignant, beautiful, bombastic note. The way that they were able to get that across live was just awesome. And the thing is, they were one of those bands that you could really see, you could really tell on stage that they were just enjoying the fuck out of the whole experience. And that is just great. I mean, it makes watching them that much more fun. Absolutely fantastic, top notch. And, again, how much fun to catch up with Ralph. He's a guy I've spoken to probably every other day now for at least the last couple of months, maybe probably a year plus now. We've got our own little Horseman Facebook messaging group, so we're talking to each other all the time. But so cool to see him in person. And you guys are really, really going to enjoy that episode that he and I recorded together. One final takeaway. I was looking back at the footage today, and I'm gonna give you guys some real talk now. I didn't like how I looked on those clips. I think I looked like a bit of a flabby guts. So I'm going to need to take care of that. I think I stand to lose at least a good kind of 20 to 25 pounds inside of the next. I think that has to be a priority over the next 4 to 5 months, because tickets are already bought for my trip in December. So I'll be going on holiday, or I'll be back to the motherland on December the 9th. And then obviously I'll take a little bit of a break from the podcast. But, when I'm there, things do go a little awry when it comes to dieting and stuff like that. I, enjoy me some wine, enjoy me the desserts, and, all the other bad things. But, I can't show up there and at least not have something in the tank. So that is my vow to all of you guys. I'm going to get my fucking act together. I mean, I don't skip out on the gym. I've been pretty diligent as far as that's concerned. Over the course of the last, I'm trying to think how long now, over the course of the last probably 6-7 months, I've been really, really diligent with it again. But I have a terrible habit of being a bit of a comfort eater. So, when I've had an annoying day at work, it's straight to the ice cream, or it's straight to the cookies. And I could see where those have been packed on when I was watching back the footage. So anyway, that's just a side rant. But overall verdict, great weekend, and thank you to everybody who made it so fun, and also thank you to everybody who went out of their way to make Paige feel welcome. Because as you could probably plainly tell, she's not into this music. She's not of the scene. The only things that she knows about music-wise is stuff that I tell her, and even then, it's kind of in one ear, out the other. But it's kind of a testament to the kind of woman that she is. She will always indulge the stuff that I'm into, and make me feel like make me feel like it's cool that I'm that I have these things that I do, and she understands, I think, how important the podcast is to me. But I really appreciated folks going out of their way to talk to her and keep her make her feel like she wasn't the odd one out. Okay, right, let's get into it. So the first headline that is attracting my attention, Milking the Goat Machine are dropping a new single. 3 weeks prior to the release of their next studio record, a newer plotter, Milking the Goat Machine now present a music video for another new track in preview, Isn't Kortel, Machen Kortel. The band comments, Isn't Kortel, Machen Kortel is probably one of the most poetic songs of our career, describing the cycle of life and perfectly managing the balancing act between profundity and scope for interpretation. I can't recall being a huge fan of Milking the Goat Machine in listens previous, but let's find out whether Isn't Kortel, Machen Kortel can convince me otherwise.
Kötel machen Kötel, ist ein Kötel machen Kötel, ist ein Kötel machen Kötel, ist ein Kötel machen Kötel.
Yeah, that was pretty shit. The riff sounds like it. Just hang on for 10 seconds. The song isn't even a full minute long. It's the last couple of seconds of the clip was reserved for the Reaper Entertainment. Not to be confused with the guys from Reaperfest, but the Reaper Entertainment fucking whatever jingle. But yeah, I would assume that Isen Kortel, Bachen Kortel, the description was very much tongue-in-cheek. That's pretty funny. That's pretty cool. The band photo is pretty funny, but as far as the actual joke, it wears pretty thin. I mean, the song for the in the main absolutely sucks. So that's my thoughts on that. Okay, let's move on next to let's see, Signs of the Swarm. It says here, a couple of days ago, Signs of the Swarm put out their 5th studio album, Amongst the Low and Empty. To celebrate the release, Deathcore operatives have launched an Eric DiCarlo-directed official video for the Dreamkiller single. Let's hear what Signs of the Swarm is all about. It's not bad. The music video is pretty decent. The riffing is all right, but you know, we have kind of had a couple of bands that have, I think, broken out a little bit from the traditional deathcore trappings. You know, Carnifex being one, Thy Art Is Murder being another, and yeah, in comparison to those two bands in particular, this isn't really cut the mustard as far as I'm concerned. It's not bad. I think if you're a deathcore fan, you're gonna think this is pretty cool. For me, not so much. Actually, just on the topic of Carnifex, so they are one of the bands that I potentially have in the pipeline to get on the podcast. The pipeline right now is so healthy that I may potentially be switching to twice a week for at least a couple of weeks, because I'm not going to be able to have like a bank of 9 or 10 interviews, and then you know you kind of get to a point where maybe you're talking about certain things. We you know, oftentimes, as you guys well know, the conversation tends to move towards, you know, reasonably current events, you know, and it's pointless having those things come up, you know, 5-6 weeks, you know, in you know, with after those events are in the rear view. So I may potentially start doing twice a week, probably just for about 3 weeks, 3-4 weeks or so, just to get back on an even keel. You will know when I've decided, but just to let you know, that's possibly in the offing. So there'll be more Into the Necrosphere goodness to come. We're going to move on from Signs of the Swarm and move over to KK's Priest. He is streaming his new song, Reap the Whirlwind, and I'm assuming the lyrics will be something to the effect of, Judas Priest, you kicked me out of the band, now prepare to reap the whirlwind as I stalk your tour bus and leave an upper decker at every spot where you park. So he says, in support of their upcoming record release, The Sinner Rides Again, due on September the 29th, KK's Priest offer in listening the next new track in advance. Following the release of their first single, One More Shot at Glory, which I think we listened to and it was all right, the experienced heavy metal outfit now premiere Reap the Whirlwind. KK Downing says about Reap the Whirlwind, if you sow the wind, you will reap the whirlwind. Profound stuff, my friends. This is a common sense phrase that has been familiar with me from a very young age. Obviously, it's very meaningful, especially about the guys in Judas Priest. It's a warning that if you mistreat people like the guys in Judas Priest, or really whatever you do in life, especially if you do terrible things in life like the guys in Judas Priest, you need to be very careful, because whatever sufferance you inflict on anyone, it could come back to haunt you, and your suffering could be even more severe. Everyone, knowingly or unknowingly, has made the mistake of thinking that they can get away with small misdemeanors to suit their selfish pursuits. But if justice is to be served, you will reap exactly what you sow. That is the message of the song. I mean, he couldn't have made it more glaringly obvious who the song is about. And there are wafts of Mustaine-esque sniveling, I think, in this. But that being said, let's actually hear what the music sounds like first. I mean, this sounds like pretty much every other Judas Priest ripoff band around, but then obviously you have to take into context, KK, really for all intents and purposes. I wouldn't say was Judas Priest, clearly he wasn't, but he was a very important part of Judas Priest. So if, he's ripping off anybody, yeah, he's ripping off himself. The other thing that you have to hand to the man, he's 71 years old. I don't know of a lot of other 71-year-olds that are writing riffs and rocking like this dude. So, as much as the song is, reasonably disposable, it's a bit of an empty calories track. I have to hand it to him, yeah. He's playing it with conviction, and kudos to him for, doing something that, is actually pretty decent after, after the blow of being removed from Judas Priest, or at the very least, not being allowed back in Judas Priest. I would also say I think Tim Owens sounds pretty cool. I've never been a Tim Owens hater. I think some of the tracks that he recorded when he was in Judas Priest, I actually think are pretty decent. He's acquitting himself very well on this song. So let's give it another 60 seconds.
If you sow the wind, you will reap the whirlwind. If you stayed on course with no remorse, but you went ahead and did your worst. Now it's your turn to crash and burn. Now your hurricane is on its way.
Yeah, not bad. If you were hearing me say some of the Tim Ripper Owens songs that he recorded with Judas Priest wasn't bad, and you're going, what is Jackie smoking? Well, check out Demolition, and particularly check out a song called Hell Is Home. Really, really cool stuff. I like that song. There's a couple of very cool songs on that record, just overall, in my opinion. All right, Interloper put out a new standalone single. It says here, Interloper have launched a playthrough video for their newest offering in the form of the standalone single dubbed Sanctum. The 6-minute track is available for streaming via YouTube player Andrew Virueta. I think that's how you pronounce his surname. Comments, we present to you our newest song, Sanctum. We're extremely excited about having this new song finally out. It's a step in a heavier direction as well as a more progressive direction, which frequently when bands say that mean a shit direction. We hope you'll love it. Thank you so much for sticking around with our ever-evolving music. We are always trying to push the boundaries with what is conventional, and we feel the song really showcases the full spectrum of what we are capable of. Let's hear what Sanctum sounds like, my friends. I don't hate it. I mean, I think it's Andrew that's busy doing the playthrough. He certainly knows his way around a guitar. It's not bad. It's not bad. I mean, you know, it's taking its sweet time to get going. So we're going to jump to the 3-minute mark of the song, and you know, I'm curious to hear what the vocals sound like, because again, that could make or break this. I can't really remember much about Interloper's first record. So they put out their debut called Search Party back in 2021. And I do remember a lot of people being, you know, particularly high on that album. I don't think that I was one, because again, 2021 was a fucking fantastic year for heavy music, much like this year and the year before. But yeah, I do remember a lot of people liking it. So yeah, if the vocals can nail it, then I think this could be something worth investigating, or at least being excited about what they may do in the future. But yeah, we will see. I'll tell you what, one of the problems with this is you could play it to your parents and they would go, yeah, that's pretty good. You know, at least it doesn't have any of that screaming that I can't stand in it. Yeah, it's not bad. It's not grabbing me by the feels, that's for sure. Speaking of a band that does grab me by the feels, if you are in Asia, get ready to be excited, because Marduk will be touring there in September. So it says here that they have shows booked in Japan, South Korea, Thailand, India, and Hong Kong. I'll be very curious to know how they go down in Thailand or in India. Either way, I'll let you guys in on a wee little secret. I got Memento Mori in its totality last week, and it is fucking excellent. I will, of course, talk about it more on the podcast as time goes on. I'll do a full review nearer its release, but let's just say someone somewhere took a long, hard look at themselves in the mirror, and they realized that they needed to step up their game. It is, it has a lot more in common with Serpent Sermon, Wormwood, records of that era than it does Victoria, and mercifully, there are no children singing on it anyway. So that already is a step in the right direction. But we'll talk about that more nearer the time of its release. But all I would say is, if you're a Marduk fan, get excited. Silver Bullet from Finland have just released their latest studio album, Shadow Fall, worldwide via Reaper Entertainment in January this year. After an extensive European tour with Twilight Force and some festival shows, the band are now back with a digital single, a completely unnecessary cover of Judas Priest's song, Nightcrawler. Much like Darth attempting to do Where the Slime Live, and we listened to that last week, I can only imagine how this is going to sound. This is, Nightcrawler is off the album Painkiller. Painkiller, to me, is one of those just absolutely perfect coming together of the stars. The stars aligned when that when that record was made, and there is just not a single poor moment on it. Every second of that record is pitch perfect, brilliant heavy metal. It's the best thing that Judas Priest has ever done, in my opinion, by far. I mean, there's not even anything that comes close to comparing to it. It's the best performance from every man in Judas Priest, including Rob Halford, also by far. So you have your work cut out for you when you take on a song like this, and I'm scratching my head over what you can bring to the table that's going to be fresh, new, and interesting as far as the song is concerned. But we will see. Stranger things have happened on this very news rant. I ended up liking a Watain song. I even ended up liking a whole Watain album. So, anyways, let's get to it. This is Silver Bullet with their cover of Nightcrawler. Well, they took a stab at doing something a little different with the intro, very slightly different, but a little different all the same, and that was quite cool. The rest is pointless. Vocals are all right, but I mean, again, how do you try and take on Rob Halford at his own game? You may as well have attempted like something gothier instead, or just doing something a little bit different. But to try and sing like Rob is not going to work. And then I think one of the problems that I have with how this cover sounds, one of the things that was really magical about that Painkiller record is that the guitars were recorded in such a way that they were almost like vocal lines in their own right. I don't know if that's going to make sense to everybody. Let me know if you think I'm on the wrong track here or I'm talking shit. But from my interpretation of that record has always been, and I first heard it when I was about probably, I think maybe 11, 12 years old. I remember thinking, this is the most evil sounding thing I've ever heard. I just fucking absolutely loved it. But I think one of the things I've always loved about it so much over the years is that the guitars are almost like vocal lines in their own right. They just hit so hard on every single song. Whether it's Painkiller, whether it's All Guns Blazing, even A Touch of Evil, which once Rob Halford had come out of the closet, took on a very different meaning for a lot of people. And again, testament to the metal scene, to how accepting they were of that. Frankly, I mean, I think that album was so good, he really could have come out and declared himself to be just about anything, and people would have gone, fuck it. Painkiller is too good, I will never stop listening to it. But yeah, let's say, I'm not going to call it a vain attempt, an admirable attempt. Good on you guys for trying. But, this is kind of like one of those things where, at modern day school sporting events, when the parents stand there and yell, "You're all winners," this is kind of what falls into that category. You're all winners. All right, we've got Till the Dirt presenting a new track called Starring Role. Now, again, you guys know that I've been aware of, and frankly, you, the Legion, have been aware of Till the Dirt for a while now, because we had Kelly on here, way before Nuclear Blast picked this up. We are going to have him back on the podcast at some point, hopefully in the coming weeks. And he is going to talk about Till the Dirt in more detail. But until then, if you need to be reminded about what this sounds like, obviously we listened to Outside the Spiral, which was their first single, and I really love. We're now going to listen to this one. It says here, influential death metal legend, atheist vocalist, and Till the Dirt mastermind Kelly Schaefer comments on the new song. Starring Role is the first track on the album. It's a song that ranks amongst my favorites on the record, and also a favorite of producer Scott Burns. It's a straight-up ripper. It encompasses the unique hybrid qualities of the whole album. Lyrically, it's a song about the oddness of dreams and the role we sometimes do not seem to play or understand as we awake from them. This is a perfect banger for cranking loud and driving at high speeds. I think that is true of the entire record, frankly. But you guys hear this and tell me what you think. I think one of the things I particularly love about this record is, and it's true, by the way, of the whole record, which is why I refer to it as the record, not just the song, is Kelly's vocals. I think he's just done such a fantastic job of doing things that are experimental, interesting, just keeps you wanting to listen and hear more. If he had just, gone, the screaming route for every single song, it would have been good, but it would have just kind of been another, heavy, melodic-ish, death metal-ish album. But what he does with these vocals makes it, just way, way more unique. The other thing is he has also got some very, 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 solid players backing him up on this record. I mean, you've got Dylan Marks on drums. He's been with Void Ceremony. He's played with Atheist live. You've also got Jerry Witansky, who's now also with Atheist. He was with who was he with previously? I actually don't know off the top of my head. But yeah, he's got some absolute badasses backing him up. He's doing an absolutely sensational job, and it's fucking great just to see him back making music. Atheist is a band that means a lot to a lot of people. I love Atheist, and as I've said before, I even enjoyed the last record, which some folks like, some folks don't. But I hope this is going to be a record that gets Kelly the recognition he deserves, because I seriously think it has that potential. It's an album that feels to me like it could break out, and if it lands at the right time, it lands on the right ears, I think it will do very, very well for him. Let's give it another 60 seconds.
Into a lucid daze.
Fun fact about Kelly is that he auditioned for Velvet Revolver before they chose Scott Whelan to be their singer, and you can definitely hear that in his voice. Like, he has the scope in the way that he sings to have fit into a band like that really well. He would have fit in, frankly, really well into Stone Temple Pilots as well, I think. All right. Next up, Ulcerate are announcing shows in North America. So if you're in the US, and I know that the vast majority of people in the Legion are US based, then get ready to be happy, because if Sam Bean and Matt Wilcox endorsement is anything to go by, and on this podcast it is, then they are a band that you absolutely, under no circumstances, want to miss when they play live. They haven't played in the UK for quite some time, as far as I know. At least not that I was aware of. So hopefully I'll get to catch them at some point. But yeah, just for the benefit of all of you, it says here, this November, Technical Death Metal Masters from New Zealand, Ulcerate, will be performing a string of headlining shows in North America. Australian death metal machine Alters will be joining them as special guests on this run. Last year's Alters record, I think it was last year, was fucking superb as well. So if you haven't checked that out yet, make sure that you get that on the old shopping list right quick. It says here, Ulcerate on tour announcement after 3 long years of pandemic interruption. We are very proud to finally announce the first shows on North American soil to showcase Stare into Death and Be Still. Still, in my view, one of the very best, I wouldn't even call it death metal anymore, but one of the very best extreme metal records maybe ever produced. It is absolutely fucking astonishing. Originally booked for 2020, to finally have this come to fruition is nothing short of cathartic. Joining us as special guests are our Australian brothers Alter, together offering a deadly Antipodean assault that will truly be a sight to behold, and it looks to me like they are playing in North Hollywood at the Knitting Factory, San Francisco in Neck of the Woods, that's provided San Francisco is still standing. Portland, Oregon, so they go from one complete septic tank to the next. Tacoma, Vancouver, British Columbia, Chicago, Illinois, another place that has been left to ruin by Democrat rule. Detroit, another place completely ravaged by mismanagement of the politicians in charge. Toronto, Montreal, don't even want to talk about what's going on in Montreal. Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore, New York City. So basically they're taking a tour of almost every single city that has been wrecked by the by the liberal left. Anyways, but that being said, if you're in one of those cities, or if you're not, make sure that you risk your life and go and see the show. It'll be well worth seeing. Fossilization premiere Oracle of Reversion single to promote their forthcoming debut album, Leprous Daylight, Death Doom Ensemble. Fossilization offer in listening the Oracle of Reversion single, Everlasting Spew Records will handle the release of the new music output on September the 8th, 2023. No idea what Fossilization sounds like. I do know that Death Doom, again, is a bit of a hit or miss genre in my view, but let's hear what this sounds like. Can I just pause there for a second to say, I don't know whether my interpretation of the Death Doom subgenre differs from the folks at Everlasting Spew or Metal Storm, but that is not Death Doom. I mean, Death Doom to me is like, we're here for 2 minutes and then, they've finished their first riff. That is just discordant, nasty, gnarly, badass death metal in the vein of stuff like Grave Miasma. First 50 seconds, I've got to say, this is a strong contender for the first full-blooded top-notch of this week, because that is fucking excellent. That, my friends, is definitely top notch. And I've just had a gander now. They are from Sao Paulo, Brazil, these guys. Obviously, we know we had an Archon earlier this year. There's been a couple of really great bands coming out of Brazil, putting out records, when they're based in Brazil over the course of the last couple of months. And this is definitely going to be one of them. If the rest of the album sounds anything like this, it's going to be fantastic. Leprous Daylight. Mark that down on your list, because this sounds fucking brilliant. We are going to give it another 60 seconds at least. Fucking fantastic. And whoever labeled them Death Doom, for sure don't give them a misleading description like that, because this band deserves to be heard by many. I'm going to make sure that happens. So expect to hear them on the podcast again very soon, but this is fucking fantastic. I would go as far as to say this is a 2 thumbs up top notch. This might even be a beyond top notch. I love it. Absolutely love it. Okay, next we've got Malefic Throne, who have begun recording their debut album. Is it Malefic or Malefic Throne? Who gives a fuck? Morbid Angel, Origin, and Angel Corpse musicians teamed up under the name Malefic Throne. And they have begun recording their debut studio album at Megadeth, The Thousand Caves, with Colin Marston. This is actually a pretty big deal. Firstly, Morbid Angel, Origin, and Angel Corpse, good God, could you cram together more badassery into one band? It says here, drummer John Longstreth comments, I am truly ecstatic to announce to you all that the recording for the up-and-coming debut by Malefic Throne on Agonia Records has begun, and the drum tracks are complete. If you're reading this, you're aware of their recent mini-album release from 2022 and have an idea of what we intend to release upon the public. Upon listening back to the basic tracks, I'm proud to say that it is so much more than what the mini-album hinted at. Every song here is a twisting maze that will provide for a truly challenging listen. We are recording this album at Megadeth, The Thousand Caves, with Colin Marston, engineering and mastering, so you can be rest assured that the album is in the best hands and ears possible. It's all the extremely brutal and infernal nuclear death that you can expect from the three of us, but add that we have all traveled and honed our skills over the last 20 years, since we initially met in 1997. On a personal note, this is the original type of death metal I cut my teeth on when I started. Evil, fast, a touched Euro thrashy, and belligerently pissed off. This is a return to the roots, and I have to say this, and I have a lot to say in this language. The drums are left wide open, raw, and live. You will hear a real band here. You will hear aggression, hellish self-indulgence. You'll hear a mistake or two. My promise is that you will hear total death metal with all of its festering boils and lesions left intact. Gene and Steve are next up, and I cannot wait to hear what they have in store for all of us. Take care, death metal maniacs. Pretty aggressive on the old sales patter there. You pretty much had me at Morbid Angel, Origin, and Angel Corpse. Let's be honest. I may have my thoughts on the quality of the stuff that Origin and Morbid Angel have put out in recent times, but those three guys together, just law of averages suggests that it's not going to be shit. Okay, let's do one more, and then we'll head over to We Are the Pit and see if there's anything there that we can read that is of interest. So I'm going to end off with Grand Cadaver, who are streaming a new track. Swedish death metalers Grand Cadaver present A Crawling Feast of Decay, the third advanced single from their sophomore long player, Deities of Death-like Sleep. The latter comes out on August the 25th through Majestic Mountain Records. Pretty sure we've had them on the News Rant before, and pretty sure I liked them. So let's hear what this one sounds like. I was pretty much ready to write that song off until that chorus section with the the really cool melodic guitar part and that little bit of clean singing at the back end of it from the vocalist. That really kind of helps elevate it. I don't like those drums at the very start of the song. I think that I just think it's a little bit dull. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's just a very monotone, like it's not a blast beat. It's not. It's. I know they're trying to do something thrashy, but I feel like, especially with modern production techniques, it always just comes off sounding very sterile to me. So that I don't like so much. But yeah, I mean, before I'm ready to bow out, they managed to vindicate themselves. I did actually remember about one other band that I wanted to give a quick listen to, or at the very least let you guys hear, because again, this is something that I've heard and I know. Unblessed Divine, featuring my friend Lee Vollenschlager formerly of Malefic Creation. They have put out another new song as well, and if you liked the first one, this one I think is substantially more hard-hitting. So I'm going to play that to you guys very quickly, and then let's have a quick gander to see what is elsewhere to be found on the internets. I obviously just need to find the fucking song, which may be easier said than done. Let's look it up here. There we go. They have dropped a new track. We got it right. So, Poland, South Africa-based death metal act Unblessed Divine, the band featuring former members of legendary death metal bands Malefic Creation, Sinister, and Decapitated, have put out an official video for their upcoming debut, the second single, I Feed. The new record is entitled Portal to Darkness, and it will land in stores on August the 18th via Massacre Records. The band comments, "This track is about letting go of all worldly beliefs and go into a primal worldview of being honest with oneself instead of being indoctrinated by the bastard Christ's teachings. Children are fed this their whole lives and find it hard to even question their religion. I Feed is a yearning to mindfully feed on all things from darkness. All things that are questions are now answers, and letting go of God and having his death as a victory." Anyway, let's move over to the music.
Don't belong.
Yeah, I mean, very much like the previous song, you got that very strong Morbid Angel influence there, and then you've got that keyboard that just comes in and just sort of throws something just completely different into the mix, and it elevates it and makes it sound exponentially stronger than it would have done otherwise. And I think it's, I think it's what makes the song great. And I think particularly that one part where the keyboard melody comes out really, really clearly sounds very cool. The production helps too. It's a very open, airy production. As I'm listening to it on these Bowers and Wilkins cans, you can really kind of hear every single instrument. I just think this is a better fit for Lee overall than Malevolent Creation was. And Sinister, wonderful band, or at the very least they used to be. I think that Michal, who has, I believe Michal was in Sinister. He's now in Unblessed Divine. I think it's been the right move for him as well to go into this. So I'm not going to talk about it much more. Like I said, too much personal skin in the game on this one to want to kind of push it too hard. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think. I like it very much. If I didn't enjoy it, I just wouldn't have played it. But I did think you guys should hear it. So August the 18th will be when that comes out. Now let's head over to We Are the Pit and see if there's anything else here that is of interest that can kind of close things off maybe on a more light-hearted note. Dave Mustaine's advice if you want to have a successful thrash band. First of all, you need to learn Jitkindo, because when somebody kicks you out of a band, you need to know how to defend yourself. Anyway, it says here, are you in a thrash metal band and interested in making it big? If so, Dave Mustaine of the Los Angeles act Megadeth has some advice you might want to consider. The guitarist recently took part in an interview with BBC Radio 4's Saturday Live, and at one point during the conversation, Mustaine talks about what he believes makes a good song good. Among the comments he shares, Mustaine talks about some wisdom that the talented producer-songwriter Quincy Jones apparently imparted to him while he was making Rust in Peace back in the day. The advice really made an impression on Mustaine. When the guitarist ends up sharing his advice for how to have a successful thrash band, he provides his own spin on Jones's words. Here's what Mustaine has to say about what makes a good song, as well as his advice on having a successful thrash metal band, as transcribed by Blabbermouth. For me, what I'd like to leave for future generations is to know that melody is so critical to songs. Quincy Jones is a very famous producer here in America. We were making the Rust in Peace record at the time, and I'd gone to this party, and Quincy was there. And he said to our engineer-producer that the key to successful songs was beat, melody, and 10 simple words. The Megadeth frontman then goes on to add, so I guess the important thing is we would like to leave to future generations is to echo what Quincy had said, but make it my own. I would say in order to be successful in thrash, you need to have a heavy beat, melody, and I'd say probably 20 simple words, because we sing so much faster. What do you think of his advice? Are you in a thrash metal band? Are these ideas that you already implement into your music? That is a completely pointless article, and I think Mustaine's advice is completely pointless. But I will say, Rust in Peace, for whatever thoughts I might have on Dave Mustaine, that album is unassailable. Absolutely fucking fantastic. It is one of the most powerful thrash albums ever recorded, in my opinion, if not one of the very best. It is an album that is so rich in different ideas and different riffing, and it's just something that he's never been able to come close to topping again. Very much like Metallica has done with Master of Puppets. It was Rust in Peace, in my view, was the Master of Puppets for Megadeth. It's just not going to be an album. I think he has it in him to do anything that even comes close to it. I think he knows it too, to be fair. Cowabunga! Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross scored the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. It says here, we've learned to expect the unexpected when it comes to the work that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross has taken on over the years. While the duo will be best known as the combustion engine behind industrial rock titans Nine Inch Nails, their career in cinema is just as impressive. No doubt about that, by the way. Absolutely no doubt. Some of the scores they've done, like the score they did for The Social Network, the score they did for Gone Girl, are absolutely fantastic. Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, Trent's score on that was just phenomenal. So there's no arguing there. When it comes to their credentials as far as film scores are concerned, I believe, in my view, Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross, is right up there with the Johnny Greenwoods of the world in terms of being best of the best. Quite why you would want to go from those films, or frankly, from Nine Inch Nails to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, though. I mean, maybe the guy just likes a challenge. I don't know. But it says here, in what may well be their most daring cinematic collaboration yet, Reznor and Ross take on scoring duties for the latest film adaptation of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles universe entitled Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. Co-directed by Jeff Rao and Kyla Spears, the animated feature will open in theater on August the 2nd and features an all-star cast of voice actors including Seth Rogen as Bebop, Micah Abbey as Donatello, Shaman Brown as Michelangelo, Nicholas Cantu as Leonardo, Brady Noon as Raphael, Ayo Edebiri as April O'Neil. You can probably tell I don't know who half these fucking people are, but anyway. Giancarlo Esposito as Baxter Stockman. I do know Giancarlo Esposito. He, of course, is the great gentleman who played Gustavo Fring on Breaking Bad. He seems to have popped up all over the place, by the way. He was in Far Cry 6 as well, which kind of made me want to play Far Cry 6, but I have to be honest with you, I could only deal with about 5 minutes of that game. I personally thought it's complete and utter shite. So if you're a gamer and you've not played that yet, then please do yourself the solid and take my advice and don't bother to try it at all. It's garbage. Anyway, Post Malone is in it as Ray Fillet, Paul Rudd as Mondo Gecko, like me some Paul Rudd, Hannibal Burgess as Genghis Frog, Rose Byrne as Leatherhead, Ice Cube as Superfly, Maya Rudolph as Cynthia Utram, and John Cena as Rocksteady. So, yeah, that's not bad. Ice Cube, I'm surprised they're even allowing him in there because he was interviewed by the big, dark, and scary Tucker Carlson, which you know what that means. That's cause for instant cancellation. But anyway, it might be hard to imagine serious-minded composers like Reznor and Ross embracing the juvenile humor of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but with song titles like Dipshits on a Roof, Murder the Shreks, Puke Girl, Megamind, Gru Type Shit, and Better Than Mark Ruffalo, it's clear that having fun is an important part of the musical journey. The score for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem follows recent soundtracks for films like Bones and All, Soul, and Mank. Soul was fucking unwatchable trash. But anyway, the next project is with famed director and longtime collaborator David Fincher for his upcoming film, The Killer. That, by the way, sounds really, really good, but I will just lament once again, because I've said this so many times at the news rant, but I'm going to say it again. Every day, it sticks in my craw that we are never going to get a season 3 of Mindhunter. It is, in my opinion, 2 of the best seasons of television that have ever been recorded. It is absolutely perfect and has made most other detective shows seem like complete garbage by comparison. The only thing that I would say is on an equal footing to Mindhunter is the first season of True Detective. And maybe you could argue the first season of True Detective is a touch above, but only a touch, only a hair. Those first 2 seasons of Mindhunter is just absolutely phenomenal. And like I said, not a day goes by where I am not fucking pissed off that we're not going to get a season 3. Anyway, they've got a clip here of the Mutant Mayhem score. I have to confess, I am very interested in hearing what this sounds like now, because Trent has a very specific style of writing, and no matter what he writes for, he can never quite seem to get away from that. Which again, I like, because it's I'm a big fan of Nine Inch Nails. And so, hearing the way that he, wrote, for example, for the Social Network, it was cool to kind of hear those little Nine Inch Nails, those very Reznor-like touches. Is he going to do that on a kids' movie? Well, we're about to find out. So this is a track called "The Man in the Basement." And by the way, when I was talking about those Reznorisms, right there, that the way that melody is pieced together, that is atypical Trent Reznor melody. And as I said, I fucking love it. But I'm actually already liking this, And I think it's fucking cool that he took this approach to writing for the movie. But let's carry on. You know what this sounds like a little bit? If you are familiar with the Nine Inch Nails back catalogue, Beside You in Time off With Teeth, which is one of my favorite Nine Inch Nails songs off my favorite Nine Inch Nails album, it sounds like he's jamming to that song. It sounds like Trent Reznor jamming to Beside You in Time. But yeah, like it, love it actually. And again, I mean, I make no excuses for the fact that I think this dude is a fucking absolute musical genius. You can't not be a musical genius and have achieved everything that he achieved. So, my friends, on that note, it is time for me to wrap up the news rant. That brings us to the very end of another episode of Into the Necrosphere. If you've stuck around until now, thank you so much. Thank you also once again to Jon Krieger, my guest. Thank you so much to Katie of Suspiria PR for getting that interview set up. Make sure you check out Blackbraid. Make sure you check out Drugoth. And continuing our celebration of independence on this episode of the show, make sure you check out the new Quell record, All That Was and Will Never Be. I'm going to play us out with the title track off of that album right now. And then be back here next Tuesday because I'm going to be talking face to face with my bro Ralph Schmidt of Ultha. This is one you are absolutely not going to want to miss. So stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.
Listen to